All right. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, whatever time you're listening to us. We are just so grateful that you are here. And if you cannot see, I am alone. That is right. Tanner left me. We are no longer together. No, I'm just kidding. Tanner's just busy, and I wanted to make sure that we still met our deadline. So you guys are just going to experience me today. So as I was planning and trying to figure out what to talk about, that, I didn't need Tanner for, I realized that training was probably the best option to do because that's what I do for a living. So I figured that we could talk about, how to best train people. And I know this could be a potential more difficult or more niche in regards to the specialty and things like that, as we're really working more on how to be trained or how to follow and doing entry level jobs and things like that. But we can do this for all sorts of different things. Training is even if you've had 1 year experience, you can train someone that has 1 month experience and things like that as well. So I figured this would still be pretty applicable for who we're reaching out to. And if they're, of course, you're already in the training field, or you're a leader in whatever company or team captain at your school or your club, this is a great way to be able to kind of help out a little bit better and with better results in the end. So I think it's gonna be a lot of fun. It is weird. I can already tell by just talking to myself, but it'll be good. And I have a huge passion for training. I've been doing it, training, man, probably 6 to 8 years now. I feel pretty confident in it. And now it's my job. So that's pretty much all I do. I'm the director of training for a lifeguard company. And it's been a wonderful experience to be able to grow in such a way. I think in the past, either 4 or 5 years, just a little humble brag here, but past 4 or 5 years, we've been the top training provider for Red Cross in regards to lifeguarding across the nation. So it's been a very cool experience. I've learned a lot, and I feel like this would be a great way to pass down the torch and help you guys along the way as you progress into becoming leaders, whether, again, like I said, team captain, manager, leaders in general. This is pretty much what I've learned are kind of the key steps to being the best trainer that you can be for the people around you. So we'll go ahead and get started. Pretty good chance I'll talk forever, but I'll try my best to keep it within the 1 hour segment, as I usually try to do. But as you all know, even with Tanner holding me accountable to not talking too much, we still run to like an hour and 15, hour and a half minute episodes, and you can get over it because we like talking, and that's what we're here for. So also, before I get started, there's a good chance that I will probably be doing some more solo podcasts as Tanner gets busy handling operations of his side of the company and things like that. So if you can think of a name for just me in my segments, basically random thoughts, random things that I will kind of help with, give it like a little fun name or something like that. You got a good idea, feel free to comment on this video below, and that way we can have something so we can know it's a solo segment with just yours truly, which is probably better. And I'm just kidding. It's hard to beat having a co-host with Tanner. He's a lot funnier than I am, for sure. So he will be missed. But yeah, since these will probably happen, we might as well get a playlist going on. But yeah, you got something creative, give me the name, put a comment below, and if you do it, I'll be sure to give you some what is not recommendations, shout outs. I'll give you a shout out for your creativity and your wonderfulness. So appreciate you to whoever in the future comes up with that. Anyways, let's get back. I had a tangent. I still tangent, even though Tanner's not here to help me with that. It's going to happen. But as we go into, here's what I have found to be the best. What did I do? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 steps, 8 tips to help you become a better trainer. Starting back with probably the more obvious one, which is looking back at how you were trained. And I feel like this one could either be easily overlooked, or you're saying to me, Parker, that's probably the most obvious thing in the world. But that is kind of the point. Either way, right? We always start simple in anything that everything we do. We crawl before we walk before we run before we sprint. And this to me is a good baseline to understand what did I like about how I was trained? What did I wish I could have been trained on a little bit more? How do I wish I was trained? Did they show me a lot of videos? I'm more of a hands-on guy. Did they just kind of throw me in and see what happens? Did they over prepare me? Was it overwhelming? But it's good to kind of look back and see how you were trained, and what you like and what you didn't like from that, because that allows you to then build a baseline off of what you want your foundation to be. So for instance, I, looking back when I was trained, uh could have used a little bit more encouragement. Not that it was anything bad. I'm in the military, or was. I am long since been gone from that. But so I'm used to the direct and the uh, it's going to happen one way or another type mentality. But I have learned through my time that encouragement does have a powerful role to play when it comes to learning. And I talk about this a little bit later, but that was kind of the one thing that I noticed, that, a positive mindset, a positive twist on things, a positive outlook all have a huge kind of impact on how I teach today. And so that was something I learned, was, a little bit more positivity, not so much just don't do this, don't do that. A lot of what I try to avoid is the don'ts. Don't do this, don't do that, because it doesn't offer a lot of real correctiveness. It just kind of tells me what not to do, but I don't really know what to do within that sentence, right? Um, and in other ways, I just wish I would have had a little bit more conceptual learning, and I'm big on conceptual teaching. That I'll talk about towards the end of this, but you will see that's what I realized, right? That's what I saw that was kind of missing. And it allowed me to be able to really kind of understand and focus on that, and then put that as my emphasis. So that's why I get to, where you're looking back. It's not necessarily going to make you the better trainer or anything like that, but it will give you a good starting point for what you want to focus on when you start training people. So real quick, real easy, nothing big deal there, but something to really kind of take point on as you start to step into your initial part of training. So moving on next, this one, I know Tanner and I are really going to work on actually trying to create a whole podcast for this next one, but I think it's really, really crucial to start working on at least figuring this out. And that's, part two, or step two, I guess, tip two, whatever you want to call it, is figure out who you are. Figure out what trainer you want to be. I think a lot of times what becomes the issue is you usually get one of two things, right? You either want to emulate whoever your trainer was, right? Because that's your only representation, or the best representation that you have of a leader is, or you think you have the understanding of what a trainer is, and you either don't feel comfortable in that role, or you're not doing it. It doesn't work for you, I guess would be a better way of saying that. And what I have found is that there's no one character, there's no one like trait that defines whether a trainer is good or bad. You could be extremely extroverted, you could be a great trainer, but you could be extremely introverted and you could still be a great trainer. You could love literally everything. You could have a vast knowledge of everything, and you could be a great trainer. And you could not really know as much as you feel like you should before you start training. And believe it or not, you could still be a good trainer. And I think what's important to understand about that, especially that last comment of whether I know everything or whether I don't know enough, is it's not necessarily about the knowledge. And I know this is kind of like a weird thing to say, but just because let's say you have all this knowledge of something, let's say 100% mastery, I know everything. It doesn't mean necessarily that that's going to make you a great trainer, because if I can't communicate that knowledge, then regardless of how much knowledge I have, I won't be able to actually communicate that so that someone else is receptive to that, right? And that they're allowed to actually be retentive to that. And at the same time, if I don't know all the 100% mastery of that subject, but if I'm at least able to communicate what I do know and kind of have a good conceptual basis for the rest of it to at least figure it out, or to be able to help the person that I'm training or people that I'm training figure it out, then I'm still a good trainer. And as we push into training and as we teach more and more and more, we start to build that mastery. And they always say one of the best ways to learn something is to teach something. And so I truly believe you don't have to be a master of the subject to still be a phenomenal instructor. You just have to be able to want to learn and want to understand what it is that you're teaching. And it's just going to take a little bit more intentionality, and it's going to take a little bit more care and attention to making sure that you're teaching the right things. And once you can kind of focus on that idea, the mastery is going to come. But at the same time, they're in a spectrum. If you're a master of this, sometimes what happens is you know so much that you don't know how to go back to the basics. And so one of the funniest things that I've done, I think I learned this from my jiu-jitsu instructor, John. Obviously, jiu-jitsu had to be thrown in. I'm wearing a hoodie, guys. I mean, if it wasn't going to be put in, I was going to mark it here at some point. So our jiu-jitsu talk is in, but one of my instructors, John, was talking about, the idea of teaching jiu-jitsu, right? And, John, I think, has been doing jiu-jitsu for 14, 15, 16 something years, a long, long time. And he told me, he knows a lot. There's a lot that he knows. There's a lot that he does very, very naturally. But to teach it is like teaching how to walk, because he does all this naturally. And what's something that we do naturally? Well, we walk. We not walk, we're all pretty good at it, right? We learned at it somewhere between 1 year and 2 years old. We learn how to walk and then eventually learn how to run and things like that. But I want you to kind of take the time. And this is something to play with, and honestly might be a good game to play if you're ever bored. But you got to take your most logical human being and then try to teach them to walk, but only through a description, right? And you're like, okay, well, it's easy. Just move your leg and place it in front of you, right? But let's look at the breakdown of that. If I say move your leg and put it in front of you, I could move my leg sideways. I could shake it. I could high knee. I could high step. I could simply just slide. I could take a step as far as I could. I could take an inch step in front of me. There's so many different ways that I could move my leg and put it in front of me. So there's that concept. Then there's the balance aspect, right? Because we didn't teach them how to balance. So if I tell them to move their leg and they don't know how to balance once their leg is moving, then we have to talk about, oh, wait, no, you have to shift your weight to the other leg so that you can raise your other leg higher. You need to place your foot about approximately 1 foot in front of your other foot. Oh, but not in front of your other foot, because if you put it right in front of your other foot, then you're kind of on a what do you call it? The toe line, right? Where you're trying to like walk and balance on the balance beam. There we go. It's probably a better way of saying it, on a balance beam. So we don't walk like we're walking on a balance beam. We walk like we're walking. And you start to see how many details can come in with that. And it's like, man, where do I begin? But we've been walking our entire lives. Like walking's easy to us. And so that's kind of the idea that I want to portray to you is sometimes it's almost easier to teach something having a small bit of information, but at least it's fresh and it's new to you. And so you know how to explain the fresh and newness because you're still fresh and new. You're just a little less fresh and new than the person that you're teaching. And so this is something that I like to kind of really kind of comment and talk about is you're really focused on, and I know I've kind of tangented because I'm still supposed to be talking about figure out who you are, and I've talked about your level of intellect about the topic that you're teaching, but um, it's just really important to see that just because you don't have a lot of knowledge in something doesn't mean that you'll be a bad instructor, you know? And in some cases, even if, or I'll take that a step further, even if you aren't the best performer of the subject that you're teaching, still doesn't mean that you're not going to be the best teacher. Because a lot of times you hear the saying, you know, if you can't do, you teach. You know, that's not really meant to be an insult. I think, you know, I don't know if it started out as an insult or not. I know sometimes it's taken an insult, sometimes it's not. But the reality of the situation is if you can't do as naturally, that's because you need a more conceptual way, a deeper understanding of what you can't do naturally. And because you have such a deeper understanding of that, to really force yourself to, you know, do that knowledge, apply that knowledge, whatever that, you know, it is to know that knowledge, then you have better ways to explain that because you had to get the full deep down breakdown. Whereas sometimes you can say, guys, just walk and people will just naturally walk, but it doesn't mean they can necessarily communicate that to someone where if you said just walk and they fall over when they do. So I think that hits enough, I guess, on my little side tangent of that, but I still think it's really, really important that you don't have to be the master of the subject. You just have to be the master of teaching, right? You have to be the master in understanding of the subject to be able to teach that subject so that someone else retains it. And if you are the master of the subject, then you need to start breaking down the basic components of your subject, and you need to learn how to integrate advancements into that subject so that as they learn the basics and the foundations, those are foundational keys that will allow them to learn the advanced things. So what is foundational? What's advanced? And how do I transition from the foundation to the advanced portions? And, you know, that derives in probably to a whole nother series of, I could go on and on and on. I guess let's keep it simple. I could go on and on and on about how to integrate and how to apply and all these advancement and things like that. But the basic idea is learn how to figure out what's the foundational concept that once I lay down all these foundations and once they masters all these foundations, I can essentially branch off into advancements of each one of those foundational concepts. And I always think of it like a tree, right? My tree could have, you know, starts out as like a stick. I got nothing, you know, I just got some roots and I'm just trying to stay alive in the wind. And then there are foundational concepts that I need to know. Those are going to be my branches. Someone's probably like, well, the roots would probably be a better foundation. Yes. But branches is a little bit more visually appealing to what I'm trying to talk about. So get over it. And so each foundation is a branch on a tree, and each branch starts out very simple, right? It's just another stick attached to my main, you know, what do you call it? Stump. Man, I'm sorry, guys. I am just not on it today, but whatever. Main part of the tree connected are the branches, and the branches are each one of my foundational. So let's say I have 7 foundational concepts to whatever topic I'm teaching. Fantastic, right? And then each branch will then go into its advanced stuff, right? The advanced foundation. And those smaller branches are the advanced, and they only apply to certain concepts and things. But if I keep working on each branch, making it beautiful, and then I advance on each branch, then I get a nice, beautiful, luscious tree. So that makes no sense to you. I don't care, but that's how I visualize it. And that's the idea that I want you to see is we all start from one point and then we grow our branches, and then our branches grow smaller branches. And that's what gets us into the biggest and best understanding of mastery of whatever subject that we're teaching. So I think that ends my tangent. Now let's go back to figuring out who you are, because now it doesn't matter. The whole point of tangent was it doesn't really matter if you're 100% mastery of the subject. You do need some form of foundational, maybe some mid-level advanced knowledge of what you're teaching, but don't think that just because you aren't the master doesn't mean you can't teach it. Teach what you know to the in what you know very, very well, and that's going to help you teach and learn the rest of the parts, right? And so that's going off that. But you need to figure out what kind of person you're going to be. You know, what kind of trainer you're going to be. Are you going to be the hard ass? Are you going to be the one that's super supportive? Are you going to be the one that's going to be enthusiastic? Are you going to be the compassionate person? Are you going to, you know, and then there's mixing all of them together, right? Or I'm going to be the disciplinary one. I'm going to be the one that, you know, holds the ground, holds the standard. I'm going to be the, you know, whatever you're going to be. You need to figure out like who that is, right? But you can't really figure out who that is until you figure out who you are. So for me, like I love to be the best of the best, right? That's just kind of who I am. I want to be the best of the best. I am striving to be the best of the best. I am going to work as hard as I possibly can to do that. And how does, you know, what helps me do that? People holding me accountable. Whoa, people challenging me, people giving me those goals and those like almost intangible goals to be able to achieve them. I need people to be direct with me. I can't deal with like the wishy-washy stuff. I can't deal with like, don't try and not hurt my feelings. You're way better off telling me exactly what I needed to improve, exactly what I did wrong than anything else. That's just who I am, right? And that's the point. I understand who I am. And the only way that I can be the best instructor, to be the best trainer, is to do the same thing, right? I'm going to challenge people. I'm going to, you know, hold that line. I'm not going to lessen my standard. I'm going to tell people how it is. I'm going to tell them like, hey, this was wrong, but I'm going to tell them what's good. And I'm going to literally teach them how I want to be taught. And that's where my foundational portion comes as a trainer. And there's more to it than that, right? I want, you know, I really care about people wanting to grow. I care about them being successful. And that is presented within my teaching and how I train. And I think that can be very easily seen as well within that, you know, because whether I am training you or whether I'm just now meeting you, like I'm already caring about who you are. I'm already caring about what you're trying to be, and I'm already trying to help you be there, right? Whether I know you inside and out or whether I just met you, that's my idea. You know, that's my philosophy, that no one is incapable of learning, and there's no one that I should block away from learning, regardless of like who they are, right? I just want people to learn. I just want to help them. And that's what I figured out in the end of that's who I am. I just want to help people. And that allows me to create my foundational point to be able to help train people, because now I understand that. And now my passion resides within that. And it's not a question of, it's all natural. There we go. That sums it up. It's very, very natural. Because if I try to be super aggressive, if I try to be almost like, or even, yeah. So if I try to be aggressive, I apologize. And so if I try to be aggressive, like that's not going to work for me because I'm not really an aggressive person. But at the same time, if I try to be theatrical, if I try to be, I'm trying to think of like rainbows and butterflies. There we go. It's not really who I am. You know, like I'm a positive person, but like I don't live in a world of rainbows and butterflies either, right? I don't sugarcoat things because it just is not who I am. Now, I'm not always a dick to people when they do wrong or as I correct them, but at the same time, like I'm not concerned about trying to say things in a nice manner. I'm trying to say things in a positive and corrective manner, right? And again, that'll probably push down. Let's see, we're gonna throw that bad boy in there. Um, yeah, towards the very end. So won't go into that very, very much. But the idea is I figure out who I am. I'm not trying to be like other instructors that I've had in the past. I'm trying to be my own person. I'm trying to be my own instructor. And once I was able to kind of figure out who I was able to take specific concepts from people that I liked that emulated what I want. And that is probably the smoothest transition into tip number 3. So beautifully done. Thank you for the applause as you applaud in your car, at your home, wherever you're listening to this. But man, was that a good transition. So next tip number 3 is to emulate those who resemble what you like. And this is the key thing, is resemble those that you like, but not who you're trying to be. So what do I mean by that? I like to take my leaders. It'll be a little easier. Charles, let me use Charles and Gabby as my people. There were things that I liked that Charles did, which was very direct. He pretty much set the standard that you were either going to do it or there were going to be consequences. And there was just no ands or buts about it. It was very simple. It was very easy to understand. And he did not like lower that line. I think one of my first memories of Charles, the very first time I actually ever met Charles, was at my lifeguard class when I was taking the lifeguard course to work for Barefoot. And it was funny because Blake had mentioned, I saw him the first weekend and then Charles came in the second weekend, and Blake was already saying, hey, when Charles is here, when he is talking, he's very big on respect and, listen to what he has to say, or he will encourage. I feel like he said it positive like that. I said, he will encourage you to do so. And so sure enough, we met Charles, and Charles comes up and he goes to talk to all of us, and there's some people talking. And in a mid sentence, I mean, without dropping a dime, I mean, he went from whatever he was saying to, okay, no one's like, people are talking while I'm talking, not going to do that. 25 push-ups, boom, done. And so he drops down, first one to drop down too. And we're like, what's going on? He goes, let's go, 25 push-ups. And so we did our 25 push-ups and we got back up and he started talking again. And amazing enough, there's still people talking. And he goes, oh, I guess we didn't learn the first time, so let's go and do 25 more push-ups. And so he drops down, first one to drop down. He goes, all right, 25 more push-ups. And so we did 25 more push-ups. And people got the gist, man. I mean, 50 push-ups in like 2 minutes. I mean, that is redonkulous in my opinion. But at the same time, it's so great because no one was talking while I was talking the entire time after that. Even when he came back, like it quickly spread that when Charles was talking, no one else was talking. And we were able to encourage that because of what we interacted with. And so I love that. I love set the expectations up front and keep them, it's a good, quick little Jocko quote. It's not what you preach, it's what you tolerate. And it was very obvious that Charles was not going to tolerate people talking what he was talking because he wanted people to know what he had to say. What he had to say was important. This is how I want you to run a company. This is the type of employee I'm looking for, right? This is stuff that, if we want to like be top dog, then we got to hear what he has to say. He's not doing it for him. He is the top dog, but he's doing it for us to give us the opportunity to be the best that we can be. And so I thought it was just really great. And then you have Gabby, who leads very much through kindness. She is such and not that Charles doesn't, that's kind of what I'm trying to say here, but Gabby's was far more obvious. Charles loved you, man. He'll love you the first time he meets you, and he'll take care of you and he spreads that love and support. But when it comes to getting things done, it's straight, that's forward, right? Gabby always took a good approach on the kind route. She was able to say, hey, you know, what do we need to get done? She always kind of said we. She says, how can I help you succeed? Hey, this is what we got going on. How are we going to make it happen? And she just always did it with like a kind way, always did it in the way of like a we, as a team. And, so when she greeted you, it was always like, hey, sweetie, how are you? Like, how are you doing? And she took genuine interest in you. And I always loved how Gabby made you just feel like you were on top of the world. And it was just such a really cool experience. And that impacted me. And I didn't really think that would impact me because, again, I was military. I like being straight up. And yet at the same time, like, every time Gabby like reaches me, is like, hey, sweetie, like, how are you doing? Like, it's just like day made, man. Like, day's already made. And I realized there's method to that, right? And that made sense that we need to not just treat the people that we're training as just random people. We need to treat them like the people that they are, the person that they are. And we'll definitely talk about that in a second. But that's, again, a huge key takeaway that I took from Gabby and how she was able to do things in such a powerful manner. When we messed up, it was like Gabby was like the parent. You're just like, I'm not mad, I'm just disappointed. And I just remember like feeling like I was gonna cry. And there were times where I did cry, and she was never mean about it. She was just like, I just know you could be better, and I know that this wasn't met. And it was just such a powerful way and such a different way that I was like, I gotta take this in. Right. So I knew that I wanted to be more positive. I knew I wanted to be more kind, but I also didn't want to lose my directness. And with Charles, I never felt scared or intimidated with him correcting me. I never felt like I was going to get fired by him correcting me. It was just really clean, quick, and direct, and boom, and done. And at the same time, like Gabby approaching an entirely different way, like I also never felt like I was going to get fired or that I was doing things like terribly wrong. It was just done enough in the right way for me to understand where I went wrong and how I could still advance myself. And what they both did super, super well was to make sure that that I knew I wasn't alone in that learning and in that growth, that they were there by my side 100% all the way. So this is the concept, right? There are things that you will like. There are things that you will not like, or just things that don't necessarily suit you super well. And you start to figure out what that is for you. And then once you kind of figure that out, and that can be because you figured yourself out, so now you're looking for it, or vice versa. You watch someone train, or someone trains you and you remembered what it was and you're like, yeah, that's how I want to train. And then you got to test it out, right? Then you got to experiment and see if that does work for you, if it doesn't, because sometimes what we want ourselves to be is not exactly actually who we are. And I think that's like a big concept too. Again, kind of, let me backtrack a little bit to figure out who you are. Is just because you want to be something doesn't necessarily mean that's you, right? I wanted to be super big, fancy businessman, 3-piece suit, whatever. And turns out while I love suits for sure, I don't want to be that, right? I don't want the penthouse anymore in the city, right? I want a nice little farmhouse out in the middle of nowhere, no land, like with all the land, right? I've learned that there were certain things that I thought I wanted to be that I didn't. But it wasn't until I tried them, experimented with them, that allowed me to kind of figure those things out, right? Now, I'm still going to dress up in a nice fancy suit every now and then because I love my suits and I love the skinny ties and the slim fit and all that. But at the same time, I'm pretty much going to be comfortable in a hoodie and shorts, and that's going to call it a day, right? And it took me time to kind of figure that out. So I'm not saying you have to, when you're talking about figuring yourself out, going back to that a little bit, you don't have to be 100% figured out. I don't think you really figured it out in your entire life. I think your whole point, part of the point of living, is to figure out who you are and how you can be the best version of that person to help everyone else around you. And that's like my own little 2 cents on that. And so sometimes the best way to figure out who you are is to figure out who you like and who you want to emulate, but also make sure that it fits in with you. Because if it sounds robotic to you, if it doesn't feel natural to you, it's probably not you. And I think that's something to really understand and be patient about, and be humble enough to know whether it's going to work for you or whether it's not going to be. Because if you just try to force something that is clearly not you, it's never going to be you. And you're never going to get much further than what you're trying to be, but you're never going to actually master that or be that. So use those people to emulate, but don't force to be someone that you're clearly not. Be who you are, and people are going to love you for who you are. That is something that's always kind of like bewildered me, because I'm such an introverted person, and I know I do all these things that are extroverted. Like I feel like in podcasts, obviously you're extroverted. All the times I'm talking with a group of guards or leaders within the company and things like that, I never stop talking. But in reality, I truly am like an introvert, and that just is what it is. But it doesn't make me, and clearly, I think that's the point, is it doesn't make me incapable of still being a good teacher, right? Because it's just who I am, and I understand those limits, but I also understand the pros to that, right? There's pros and cons to everything of every person, but still doesn't mean that you're going to be a bad instructor or bad trainer just because you don't emulate what the stereotypical trainer is, right? Because once you figure out who the best person that you can be for yourself, then you're going to be able to be the best trainer that you can be for them, because you already got yourself figured out. Now you're just trying to help someone else figure themselves out. I think that summed up really well on that one. So tip number 4 is probably my favorite one. Tip number 4 is truly what builds the best trainer. And I start off with the saying, we all probably did have this one teacher that said something along the lines of, it's not my job to entertain you, it's my job to teach you. And I'm going to be a little bit blunt on this, and I'm going to call 100% bullshit. And I know that's like maybe a little bit harsh, maybe a little bit too blunt, but to me, in my humblest opinion, if I am truly there to teach, I need to think about this sentence. So I'm not here to entertain you, I am here to teach you. So I want you to go think of your favorite movie, your favorite song, your favorite whatever. And I bet you have every lyric, I bet you have every line of that movie, of that song, absolutely memorized. Pretty straight and simple. I bet you memorized some lines the first time you watched it. And then now go to, I don't know, the most random song that you think is terrible, and do you remember anything of it? Right? Or even just like the basic ones, because sometimes you probably do remember probably the worst thing you've ever heard because it was so bad. But on that average stuff, just the nonchalant stuff, you probably don't really remember the lyrics, right? You probably don't remember the lines. Like, you're not going to want to watch it again. You're not going to want to retain that. So if we are entertained, then we generally remember more. We want to remember more. But if it's just in my existence, I don't necessarily want to retain that. So with that being said, some of our best professors, our best teachers, our best coaches are in fact extremely entertaining. I mean, really think about how entertaining they really are, because they make it fun, because they present it in a way that you don't want to look away from it. You want to learn more. It's every cliffhanger. It's the big motion. It is everything that keeps us focused on what we're learning. And you can do this about anything. And this is where it gets hard to really try and train even teach this, even grasp the concept of this, because what is entertaining, right? What is enjoyable? I think these podcasts are entertaining. Like, I'm entertained by them, but I generally don't know if anyone's really entertained by this. I'm just having so much fun that I'm just doing it to enjoy it, right? And I'm hoping that I can help people with that and focus and wanna do that. Want to listen to these things because it's I found it important in my life, and obviously I want to spread the word. But I also can't use just like a boring radio voice that makes you want to fall asleep before you get to listen to the first 5 or 10 minutes. So how do I entertain? Right? That's the big thing. And this is where I know it's going to take a long time. And this is where I'm unsure if I'm going to hit the hour mark. But at the same time, this to me is probably the most crucial, because when you can be entertaining to people that you are teaching, when you can make that time fly, when you can give them the big eyes and they just want more, like they can't wait to come back to learn from you, this is your true point of success. And that's the point. This is what I'm going. Like, I have you so hooked, you want to come back and you want to retain. You want to do that yourself. Not you're forced to do this and forced to learn this. You want to. That's the idea. And that's the point. And so, as I think, when I'm instructing, when I'm training, things like that, I'm very much focused on as if I'm in basically as a theater performance. And this, I think, is kind of the funniest thing to me, because again, I'm very quiet. I'm very introverted human. But when I'm training, I am an entirely different person. I am out there. I got jazz hands going. I'm throwing things around. Like, I'm cracking what I think are probably the funniest jokes in the world. Maybe, maybe not. But I'm there to perform for those that I'm teaching, because that's the role that's bestowed upon me. That is, if I can make this fun, I know the retention is going to be higher than if I don't. If I just spit out the information, no one's going to really want to listen to that unless they just feel the need to listen to it. But I'm not necessarily trying to train those that want to be there. My big focus, my whole focus, is I'm trying to train those that don't necessarily want to know that information, but maybe either thought it might be good information down the road, or someone forced them to understand this information and now they're stuck here. And the least that I can do is provide them an exceptional experience while training them. So how do I do this? And this segment alone might be a little bit more helpful if you can see me. It might be the one episode that I say, go to YouTube and see this part. All right. So for anyone knows, we're at minute 42, I think, minute 43. This is the best, at least this clip. And maybe I'll make it a separate clip. I don't know yet, but visually, if you see this, it's going to be a little bit easier. Not everything's going to be visual. A lot of it's going to be non-verbal and still auditory, but this is going to be helpful. So as I present this, how do I make something more enjoyable to listen to? And I always say there's tone, there's speed of my words, whether I speed them up, whether I slow them down. If there's movement, and this can be anywhere, I always say jazz hands. It's not that I'm just constantly doing this, right? Just shaking my hands side to side by my head, but I'm using my hands, right? Like I'm talking about tone, right? Speed of my words, right? I'm counting on my fingers for you to see where I am, right? Even as I move my hands, I'm wanting you, and I point out towards the camera, and then I point for you to see who I am, right? And then I point towards me. So my idea with this is I really want you to try and see my words. And I always think of like the 21 Jump Street. It did 21 or 22, but he's like, see my face, hear his thoughts, whatever. Like this is actually the idea that I'm trying to portray. I want you to be able to see what I'm saying, and not through descriptive words, but actually because of how I'm using my words and how I'm using my hands provides that picture for you. And I want to be able to hit those key points and emphasize with that, right? So I got tone, I got speed, um, infliction, which I guess you could probably go with tone again, right? But how I inflict each word, right? Or emphasizing a keyword so that it really just kind of grabs your attention real quick. I got my jazz hands, and then I got movement, right? Especially like right now, I'm just sitting in a chair and I really can't move too much because obviously the microphone's not going to pick me up and you're not going to be able to hear me. But when I'm walking, podiums to me are your worst friend. You don't want to be behind a podium. The president, some other famous people can be behind a podium. It's bulletproof. That's great. But if you're not worried about your security, you feel like you're going to be safe wherever you're teaching, hopefully, then get out from behind the podium. Walk around, move around. This, above anything else, is one of the best bits of advice I can give you, because we are drawn to movement. Like our eyes are naturally drawn to movement. And what happens if I'm just standing still behind a podium is my eyes are looking for the next point of movement. I'll stare at you for 10 seconds, but then a fly hits me in the corner of the eyes and poof, I'm looking at the fly, right? Someone turns a page, I'm looking over at them turning the page. But when I move around the room, and this could be something, a little pro tip for you, this could be something as literally taking 2 steps to the left, backing up, and taking 2 steps to the right. Or it could be as grand as walking throughout the entire classroom. It can be whatever you want. But if you're the one that's constantly moving, you are taking away the chance for them to focus on anything else because you're the one constantly moving. So they can't look at that moving car. They can't look at that person that's turning the page. They can't look at the fly because I have been the one that's moving. And so now they're focused on me. So move. Please move. I'm telling you, it is probably one of the first things that's complimented in any presentation that you could ever give and any instruction that you ever give, is that if you're moving around, people are drawn to that. And there's definitely more to say for someone who has the confidence and the comfortability to move around than if you don't. Because if you're behind a podium, you are technically hiding. But if you are out there walking around for everyone to see, there's nothing to hide from. And only the most confident people are the ones able to walk around. And what's nice about it, the best bit of this is because I'm moving around, I can't focus on the fact that people are staring at me because I am moving around. But when I'm stuck center behind a podium or just stuck center at a room and I haven't moved at all, then those eyes seem to like provide a great weight. Or worse comes to worse situation, those eyes start to not look at me and they start to look at something else. And then I start doubting myself as the trainer. So move is the key line. I'm stuck in this chair, but if I'm out there, trust me, I'm moving. I'm walking throughout the whole room, whole classroom. Everyone's turning, and it's kind of funny, but it does work. So my big thing there. All right, let's talk about tone. Let's talk about speed of your voice, the words, the inflection, because this is where you really get to have people visualize what you're saying. And so I use this story as a great way to kind of show and represent this. So hang on, let me grab a drink of sparkling ice. I'm not sponsored by them, but sparkling ice ever wants to sponsor me. Y'all have like the best drinks in the world. And it hydrates me. So sparkling ice for the win. So I'm going to talk about my first EAP as a supervisor, meaning I couldn't be there. So no timeline, no nothing. I'm not going to give any incriminating evidence away, but it was the very last day, the very last hour that a pool was open. And I was actually, I was about 45 minutes away. I was picking up another pool site. It was closed for the summer because, again, it's the last day. And I get a text that says EMS called at pool. That was it. And I called again. I called every guard that was there. No one's available. And I'm again like 30, 45 minutes away. So I did my normal chain of command things. I called, my bosses and let everyone know. And I just drove. I mean, for my parents, I'm sorry, but I drove really fast. I mean, I think I hit 100, 120 in my car trying to get there as fast as I can. Because it was the first time that I was really not able to be a part of that save. And what sucks about this moment is, and this is hard for every supervisor, is I know everything that I need to do to make that happen. Like I know how to save that life. There's no doubt in my mind that if I were there, that person would be alive. But instead, I have people that I have worked with and trained with that I have to hope like did and have learned and understood everything I'm trying to teach them. So I'm running and I'm driving as fast as I can. I get there and I show up to the scene. EMS is still there. Firefighters are still there. And I walk through the gate and the first guard comes to me and he just walks to me. And I have like a racist fast break in my hand. I never let it go. It was kind of funny because I love Reese's Fast Breaks, like one of my favorite foods, but I never eat it because, candy and not exactly good for you, right? But it was my treat myself. And so, yeah, I guess I was in the gas station. If I remember now correctly, I was in the gas station. I just bought it. So I just never let it go when I got that text. So I'm driving with this Reese's Fast Break the entire time. So I'm holding this Reese's Fast Break in my hand. And one of the guards comes up to me and I walk up to him and all of a sudden he just starts crying. And I just immediately offered up a hug and he hugged me. And all I kept saying was like, she was dead. She just kept saying like she was no brain, no pulse. Like, I just don't understand. And I was like, hey, like, we're here. I'm here for you, man. And then after he said that for a while, I'm like, oh, like it was my worst case scenario too, right? Like, oh, we didn't make it. And for a second, my whole world just paused. Like it just stopped. And then he was like, then all of a sudden he goes, but then we turned her over. So the victim was a 3-year-old. And she was so small that the AD pads for quick CPR tip, the AD pads are not allowed to touch. And so she was so small that the AD pads were going to touch if we put them in the proper place. So we had to place one on the front and then roll her over and place one in the back. And AD pads work that way. And so he says, like, the moment we rolled her over, she came back to, and her just started eyes opening. And he was like, it was the craziest thing. And it was the most beautiful thing. And I can't believe she's alive, Parker. And like, that's just all he said. And he just kept saying, he's like, that was the most insane. Like, she's alive. He's like, we saved her. Like, and that she just kept going, like, we saved her. We saved her. We saved her. And I remember in that moment, I was like, honestly, dude, like, you deserve this more than I do. And I gave him my Reese's Fast Break. And I was like, here, man, this is all you. And so I get to the other group and it's like the same thing. Like, everyone's crying. We ended up doing kind of like this big group hug. And they're like, they're like, this was unreal. Like, it just, like, I never thought it would happen. And then it did. And the EMS ends up one away. They took the girl to the hospital and we just talked, and they were just so grateful because, truth be told, this was my dream team. Like, if I had any team that I could have asked for to deal with a 911 emergency on a 3-year-old little girl, it was this team. They went to every in-service. They were always trying to be the best of best. I think two of them ended up becoming instructors one of the very next year. I mean, they were just the best team I could have ever asked for. And we were just all so grateful in that moment to have each one of them by our side. And they were so grateful for me pushing them to get to know that knowledge, right? And so we fast forward that wonderful 3-year-old girl is still alive to this day. Those main rescuers that provided the care, they ended up getting like a letter signed by the mayor. The little girl gave them a card and said thank you. I mean, it was probably the coolest experience of my life because it was a true testament to me understanding how important that level of training is, and that it can happen at any point. We went a whole summer with not a single 911 emergency that year, and the very last hour that pool was open, the very last day it happened. So it really, to me, is probably the most powerful story I have to share of just the importance of being CPR trained. The gratefulness I have that our training is so extensive and so intentional on making sure that we know those skills, because I saw it in action. I saw it happen in real life. And a 3-year-old is alive today because of the intentionality of our training. And nothing can take that away. And that is why I will always, always, always push for nothing but the best training. Because every single one of those guards got to go home at night and tell their friends that they saved the life of a 3-year-old girl. And no one can take that away from them. So, powerful story. And it's a real story. I think maybe at one point we forgot that this was me telling you what I'm actually doing, which is the power of how I use my words. So there was tone. I completely set the tone, which was a point of fear, which was a point of loss, and which ended up being a point of pride and joy. And I did all of that by what words I use. I slowed down a lot of my words during that low time, during that time of loss, during that time of fear. And then I sped up my words when it became to joy, when it became to the celebration and the pride that I had for them. And I took heavy pauses, when she was not alive. She was not alive. She was not alive. And there was that huge pause to really bring in the effect of what really happened, the reality of the actual situation. And then there was almost no pause because there was so much excitement and so much pride in what was going on, what happened, and the fact that this life was saved, that it just clicked and you just couldn't get the words out fast enough. Because we couldn't be any happier than knowing that she was alive. And that's the idea. That's like kind of the point I'm saying. And that's what it's used for. So when I'm excited about something, when I want you to know this information really bad, really I'm going to get into that moment of it. Like I want to press this into you. You can see my excitement through this. And if I'm in a real standing and you're in front of me, I'm usually walking towards you, because it's like the speed of sound is not fast enough for me to get these words to you. I have to step forward and let you see these words. I need them to be as fast as possible. So I'm going to run to you to say these words. And then I can use that to also transition back, right? So as I make a transition, then I start slowing my words down. Then if I'm moving, again, kind of going off the moving concept, I know I can't move, but I'll literally back away because I'm done with that topic. I'm backing up. I'm hitting a new topic. And so it allows me to create points of emphasis. It allows you to see that, oh, he's actually transitioning. He's actually moving on, like literally moving on to a different subject. Or if I want to create power, I create that power. And it all just comes from how I'm able to use my words to inflict those words so that you can get the true picture of what I'm trying to say. And all I'm really trying to say is that you don't just have to use your words for words, but use them to present that picture so that people not only hear what you're saying, but can literally see what you're saying in front of them. And that to me is a lot more entertaining than someone that just does a whole monotone word like lecture for 1 hour. Because it's just not fun to listen to something that flat and that straight. It's just not. And it is my duty and my responsibility as a trainer, as an instructor, to be as entertaining for you to see, for you to hear, and for you to feel everything that I'm trying to portray to you, because nothing is just auditory. Nothing is just visual. It is everything. We don't want the flat sound. We want the surround sound. And the only way that you can provide that surround effect is by being entertaining. So it is our duty and our responsibility to learn how to use our words, to learn how to use our hands, to learn how to use our movement to be able to explain what it is we're trying to teach. Because if we're boring, they're out. If we lose them for even 5 seconds, they're out. And in today's world, sometimes it's less than that. In some cases, you only have 2 to 3 seconds to make a mark whether someone decides to retain this information or move on to the next. And that's insane. So you need to make every second count. So you better be entertaining. Otherwise, you're going to get bare minimum and you're going to get bare minimum returns. And that's not what we want when we want to be one of the best instructors we could ever be. So I hit entertaining heavy. Good chance this will be a part 2. This might be the end, but I'm going to keep going anyway, and we'll see what happens. Maybe it's just going to be a long episode and y'all can enjoy it like a movie. I don't know, man. So we go on to the next tip. So that was tip 4, was entertain. A long one, but a good one. Again, one of my favorite ones. Next one's associate. Tip 5, associate. This to me allows you to be the most entertaining person for the other person. It allows you to be the best instructor for the other person. So now our intention is not on how we can be the best instructor. Now we're focused on how can we be the best instructor for this person. And this is really what's going to help increase that retention, right? It's really what's going to help them want to learn from you, especially the next time. It's what's going to make them kind of keep wanting to learn. So I need to learn how to associate with people. And in the basic forms of association, I'm just learning what they like, what they don't, and how it relates to me, right? Oh, this person played soccer. I played soccer. You know, this person did track. I did track. This person went to this school. I went to that school. You know, this person and I have the same hobbies. This is all great stuff because it allows us to say, hey, I'm not person A, you're not person B, but we actually have connection here. Like we both did track. What did you do? It allows you to spark the initial conversation and give you the points and ability to talk and keep that relationship building. Because the greater the relationship I have with someone, the more they're going to retain the information. If I have no relationship with someone, then they're not going to always be able to retain that information as well. And that's just kind of the fact of the matter. And usually the ones that we do, even if it's a random stranger, is because they've built that relationship, because we have started to see that person as a person and not just a speaker or a trainer. So anyone that really grabs our attention, even if we don't know them, even if we know our coach or our other trainer really, really well, the reason why is because they're able to associate in a way that makes sense with us, and that relationship has been built based off that association. And they've been able to find the perfect ways to click with the level of association that we need. You know, how many times have you been stuck in a problem, right? Whether it's work, school, not doing this proper technique, right? Whatever it may be. And, you've heard one thing didn't work, heard another thing didn't work, heard another thing didn't work, and then boom, all of a sudden it clicks, right? It was something that was said in just the right way where it finally clicked. So this is what I mean with association is I need to find multiple ways to teach the same thing, the same concept. And so I think I use lifeguarding as an example. I use the most simple one, which is the CPR cadence, right? It's 100 to 120 beats per minute to do great CPR compressions under Red Cross. So how do I match what do I need to teach? How do I teach that for people to understand what 100 to 120 beats per minute is? And so they use the songs, right? Another One Bites the Dust and Staying Alive. Those are the most common, most old school ways to teach someone. Except not everyone listens to classic rock. Especially me. Like, I know the songs because I know the songs, but I think we're kind of getting to a point where people may not actually know the song, right? I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe everyone still knows it because it is, again, classic rock, and classic rock lives on forever. But there are better and other ways to do that. So another way to talk about it is the metronome. If you're in band, that metronome is a perfect 100 beats per minute. The back when Star Wars was out, I would always say Darth Vader's theme song, that was actually 104 beats per minute. And now what they've actually done, if you click on Spotify, you can literally look up like CPR songs or something like that, and it'll give you every song between 100 to 120 beats per minute. And it's got anywhere from Beyonce to some classical music. Like, it literally has any and every song between 100 and 120 beats per minute. So there's literally like even more than 3 or 4 ways now. There's like a whole playlist to play and make sure you hit that 100 and 120 beats per minute. So it's a very basic example, but the idea is that you really want to make sure that you are always learning how to teach something in a different way. And that's the thing when it comes to association, when it comes to teaching and training, is that you are still learning as you're teaching. You're just learning how to teach something better. And so this is what will happen is you'll think of one really good thing, and then you'll be kind of stuck like, okay, how am I supposed to teach 2 or 3, 4 different ways if I only know this one? Well, then you go back to your emulating, right? You go back to what did that one person say or do that made sense for you? Or you get to work with them and it's like, oh, this person taught something in this way and that made a lot of sense. I'm going to put that in my pocket. That's what I would say, by the way. I put it in my pocket, right? Anything that I can save for later to teach someone in case they don't understand what I'm trying to say, I'll put it in my pocket. So there's where my little term comes from. Anyone curious, as I say this randomly, that's what I mean, right? So I talk about taking off gloves is another CPR context, right? You got to learn how to take gloves, and you got to like pinch the glove at the palm on one glove, and then you flip that inside out, right? But then there becomes a point, because I got this hand's clean, right? Which means I can't touch the blood. I don't want to touch. The whole point of wearing gloves was not to put blood or vomit or whatever else on my hands. So now I got to figure out how to get my 2 fingers underneath this glove without getting vomit on me. And for the longest time, we just say, just kind of like flip your wrist, point it out. I'm doing a terrible angle on my camera. And then just kind of slide your fingers underneath and let it roll out. But then all of a sudden, one time, one person just wasn't like grasping that concept. And I was like, Spider-Man? And they're like, yeah. And I was like, shoot out your web. And so we did like the Spider-Man web and it was like, boom. And I was like, perfect. Now you flipped out your wrist. Now you see the space. And then we flipped it all out. Right. And it was just something that like randomly came to me one day. So it's stuff like this. It's either it's going to come to you as you try to work and figure something out, or you're going to see something that just totally made sense that you're adding to your, again, you're putting it in your pocket. So I have all these situations, things and examples I can give to you, but the easiest way to go about it, again, not trying to make this super, super long, but find ways that make sense for the people that you are teaching. But the only way to figure that out is to figure out who you're actually teaching. Who are they? And get to know them. One of my more favorite ways to associate with someone is not necessarily finding commonality, but in fact, finding something that you have nothing in common with. I always talk about like, I want to be like the world's like, I don't want to actually be, but like, I've always wanted to learn how to play chess. And I know how to play chess. I know what the pieces do, but I don't really understand how to use those pieces well. Right. And so I know nothing, like there's nothing that I can really contribute to a conversation about chess. And if I find out that one of my students, I really like chess, then I'm gonna be like, oh, cool. Like, how long have you been playing chess? Right. Who taught you how to play chess? Where did it come from? What level are you? And I can just keep asking those questions. And what happens is, if you noticed, is I'm not actually really talking. I'm just asking a bunch of questions. And what that does for the other person is see that it's not about me as the instructor. Like I care about them. I don't care about me. I care about you. How long have you been playing chess? Who taught you? Oh, you played with your grandfather? What was he like? When did he start to know about chess? How long have you been like learning from him? What's your favorite move? And I can just ask and ask and ask away. And the best part about it is there's no uncomfortable barrier between us, because guess what? That's what they're passionate about. They're passionate about chess. And when you're passionate about something, you don't have to worry about being confident in it, because you already are. And so you can just simply talk about it. And it's so cool to see people and their passion and just talk over and over and over again. And that relationship is built so much faster, in my personal opinion, because I've broken the barrier between instructor to instructee, I guess would be the best word for it, to I'm a person, you're a person. And guess what? I care way more about you. And when someone feels cared about and they feel cared for, then there becomes this level of, man, if they care about me for what I want to know, then what do they know? Or if they care about this, then they have to care about what they're teaching me, because they care about something that doesn't even remotely contribute to chess. Like lifeguarding and chess really have no commonality. Chess, you can do 1,000 things. Lifeguarding, you're doing a 1 + 1 = 2. If they are passive and they are facing you, I'm doing a passive front save. Very simple. Like there's no between. And that's it. But still, that relationship is built, even though it has nothing to pertain to what I was teaching, and it has nothing to pertain to what I know. But yet I have completely built a relationship with someone for asking them about their passions, what they do. So something else to do, but the closer relations you have, the easier it's going to train them. And that is pretty much the end of that. The closer relationship you have, and this is not like you're sharing your deepest, darkest secrets, but the closer relationship you have with the people that you are training, the more receptive they are going to be, and the more they are going to want to learn from you. The last little part of association I go with is the senses. And I always we have 5 senses, right? And this is where I always panic, because I always feel like I'm going to miss one. So we have sight, taste, smell, hearing, and feel. See, I panic every time. I know them, but it just makes me panic. So The things I always say is you should never smell or taste anybody that you're training. All right, don't lick them. It's weird. It's gross. Don't go up to them and just go right. That's a little weird. It's a little strange. But the other three are super good, right? If I can tell you what you're doing, if I can tell you how to do it, that's a way. If you can see how to do it, that's even better. And then if you can do it, that's the best. Because now I know you can do it. So, there's like the stats, and I don't have all the stats. No one sue me over not knowing what the stats are. But it's like 10-20% are auditory learners, meaning they primarily learn from anything auditory, right? So if I can get better at communicating my words, they're going to respond and be very receptive to that information, regardless of any visual aid or just by doing it. And then you have a heavier percentage that is visual. And then you have about an equal or heavier percentage of those that they have to kind of do it first. And then you say, yes, that's correct for them to truly understand. I fall into the latter. Like you can usually show me it, but until I actually do it, like I can probably repeat it. If you show me, I can definitely repeat it once I know that it's good. But if you tell me anything, it is over my head. Like I am the least auditory person on the face of the planet. The first thing I'll usually say is show me. Like don't even bother about telling me, just show me. Because I cannot put it visually together. So knowing this, you need to understand who is in front of you that you're teaching. Are they auditory? Are they visual? Or are they hands-on? And obviously, you're generally teaching more than one person at a time. You're teaching multiple people. And so therefore, you need to understand who each person is, who's the auditory, who's the visual, who's the hands-on. And then when you're giving that feedback, it's in the way that they learn. Like I'm always going to be auditory. I'm always going to lecture. I'm always going to use my jazz hands. I'm always going to show them how to do something. I'm always going to get them that hands-on application and that practice. But when it comes to the feedback and making sure they truly retrain that, I have to emphasize further in the way that they learn. And I can only do that by knowing how they learn in the first place. I can only know how they learn in the first place by learning about them, by learning associations, whether I know that exact association and that like we are connected within that, or whether that we have no connection like chess, but I still have built a relationship and I understand how they see, because I can usually probably figure out that a person that's playing chess, that a person that's playing chess is very visual, right? And I also know that if they read something, they can probably retain it, because chess is the way you learn chess when you're studying by yourself is through books, right? But they usually are more visualistic people and they can probably read something and figure out. But they don't necessarily may not be the most hands-on, maybe in regards to application, yes, and seeing it, how it can be used in different ways. But in regards to repeating the exact step by step, they may necessarily need to be as hands-on with that. They will need the hands-on in regards to how to apply it as different factors and variables change. But other than that, they're probably going to be mainly visual people. So again, just something to think about. Not every, there's going to be a chess player that's going to say, no, I need to be more hands-on. There's going to be a chess player that says, no, just tell me what I'm doing. There's always going to be the exceptions. It's just, I can make really good inferences once I've started to learn about that person. The more you learn about someone, the more you can kind of understand and feel. Also, just the more feedback you give, you can see if they're more receptive to your audio, your coaching, or by your visual remarks, or by the fact that I had to like take their hand and say, center of chest is here. And then I place their hand on center of the victim's chest so they learn how to do CPR and do it in a proper way. So that's, again, hitting all the senses you're always going to hit, but making sure that you have a great enough association with each person to know what's the best way that I can teach them. Is it auditory? Is it visual? Is it hands-on? And in what do I emphasize as I provide them feedback? So this is everything that we covered so far is more of like how, right? entertain them, figure out who you are so that you can teach and learn how you want to teach. Associate with people so you know how to teach them. So now we're going to go to what you're going to do, like what you're going to teach. And then we'll finish up. So got 3 left. We're on step, oh God, I lost count. So step 6, tip 6. I don't know. I keep changing my words on it. But tip 6 is when you're teaching, whatever it is you're teaching, you're going to be better off teaching the concepts over just the step-by-step instruction. Now, I'm not saying to completely eliminate step-by-step instruction, but if you can't explain why you do step 1 first and then step 2, and when you go to step 3, if you can't explain that concept, and if you can't explain why you do that, then you're basically just going off of their memory. And the idea is not for them to remember this. Their idea is to retain this. And there's a difference, in my opinion. I don't know what the dictionary is going to say, but to me, there's a huge difference. I can remember something, but I don't necessarily know why. Right? There's just a memory. That's just okay. It's a cold random fact. But if I want to retain something, I need to understand it. And then it'll never be forgotten. So a memory can be forgotten, I guess is what I'm trying to say. A memory can be forgotten. When you've retained it, it can't be forgotten because you understand a concept and you can't forget it. And I talked about this. I don't remember which podcast it was, but I talked about the concept of closed guard in jiu-jitsu, right? And so if you don't know what episode that is, I don't either. So listen to all of them and like every single one, provide a comment. And if you find it, let me know. Give you a shout out. All about shout outs, right? Or comment on it and say, this is the one. And then tell them to listen to episode, I think we're on 14 now. Tell them to listen to episode 14 and he brings it back up, right? This could be like the best or worst marketing trick. I don't know, but hashtag thank you in advance. All right. Anyways, going about a concept. So closed guard was, I've been a blue belt for a while. I think somewhere about a year. So about 3 years of training. I learned closed guard almost like day 1 of jiu-jitsu. And it wasn't until blue belt, after a year of being in a blue belt, that I understand that one of the most key concepts of closed guard is to constantly break them down and to never let them get a stable base. No idea. Never knew. So for all my jiu-jitsu people out there, there's your best jiu-jitsu advice of your life when it comes to closed guard is don't let them get anything. They get a grip, break it. If they get a leg up, bring them down. If they posture up, posture them down. That's the whole point. Until you can set up and do what you want to do, constantly just make their life miserable by breaking their posture and break them down. And that's it. So fun fact, that's how you do jiu-jitsu. That's it. You'll be a black belt. You're welcome. But once I understood that concept, all the moves that I had learned step by step, well, all those made sense. I understood why they were working. I understood why they weren't. And when I found out they weren't working, it's like, oh yeah, it's because of this. I wasn't breaking them down. They already broke my posture. They didn't break them. They broke my legs open. They're already passing me, right? Because I didn't take the time to break their posture down. So I just learned all these things, and I was like, okay, well, it works sometimes, but not every time. But now I understand why it doesn't work. Now, am I any better? A little bit. I am. Am I 100% master of it? No. But that's because I have to now repeat the concept until it becomes natural. But I'm telling you, I am learning a lot more and a lot faster with closed guard because of it, because of that concept. So when you're teaching, it's very important to teach the concepts of what you're teaching. And everything that you're teaching has a concept. So it's either a key focus. This is what I want you to focus on. Focus on this. Right? This is let's do more examples other than jiu-jitsu, right? I realize no one ever did jiu-jitsu, right? Football, catching a football. I want you to catch a football with both hands because that is twice the opportunity to catch the ball. If I'm only using one, I have less surface area and I may not be able to catch the ball as well. But if I have two hands, then that ball can hit a much larger area and I am more likely to retain that football. And riding a bike, the most important concept, especially when you don't have training wheels, is you got to keep moving. And when you slow down when it starts to basically wobble, put your feet down and catch yourself, right? Because that's all it is. If you're moving, the bike cannot fall over unless you take too sharp of a turn. So the concept is to keep pedaling, to keep moving. And when it starts to wobble, then put your foot down. That's a concept. So there's concepts for everything. And there's concepts, you go on and on and on, but the idea is still the same. There's a concept for this podcast. I have to look over here at this bar and I have to make sure that when I talk, it is always in the yellow. That is the concept. Now, to be a true master, which I'm still working on, is why does it have to be in the yellow? I don't know. My bad. But I at least know that the concept is if it's in the yellow, it's good. And that's what I need. And for the most part, I've been in this yellow, so my sound is good. I think I use that so much because I finally figured out, I don't know if I told in the last podcast, but I figured out why my sound was like being all butchered. It's because of I use Squadcast as the recording device, records Tanner and I, our audio, our visual, our everything. And there was like this one setting that was supposed to like enhance the sound or something like that. And it kept taking out my sound and it was getting real terrible. So, so I slowly figured that out. So I just had to change it and now my sound is good and life is great. So it's just one of those things that is crazy when you finally, once you understand the concept of something, then you just know it's just not going to ever affect you again. So that was a big thing for me. That was one of my favorite notices, but it's just, that's why I think it's so important that you understand these concepts so that it doesn't affect you in the grand scheme of things. So the more you know a concept, the more you can retain that information. And on top of that, the more you understand a concept, the more that you can almost teach yourself the next step, right? So like as I go to this podcast, like it's somewhere between, I think these are decibels, right? But it's somewhere between 20 to 10. So I have to assume that the concept is like, this is like the normal like range-ish of like what people hear. And if it's too quiet, it's kind of like outside of that hearing, right? There's also the equipment aspect of it too, where like I have to talk at a certain level just for this microphone to even pick up my voice. But I also can't talk so loud that it starts to distort. It's too much information for the microphone to receive. So do I 100% know if this is true? I don't really know. If anyone wants to verify it for me, comment in the video below and let me know. If you're a sound tech, would love to talk with you and get to know more about this. But to me, it makes the most sense. And that's the thing is I can make the most sense out of things now because I understand the concept. Will I be a master of this? Absolutely not. I mean, good luck trying to be a sound engineer. I mean, that is like a full-blown 4-year degree just to get. And I'm not doing a 4-year degree just to learn this. But I can at least learn the basis and the concepts of it. So conceptual teaching is far more successful than step-by-step teaching. And if you truly want your people to understand what it is you're teaching and you want them to retain, you need to teach them the concepts. You need to teach them why we do step 1 first, why we then go into step 2, and how do we do step 2 to its fullest extent before we go to step 3 and why that is important. And when you do that, the retention of what you have taught is going to stay, and it's no longer just going to be a memory that they may or may not forget down the road. Ah, again, what we're teaching. Although this might be a how, I might have kind of shot myself in the foot. But tip number 7 is to provide corrective, positive feedback. And I talked about positivity way back in the early part of this, but this is probably the most crucial thing is it has to be positive. And I read somewhere that said like compliment sandwiches. This is what I first backtrack. Tell what a compliment sandwich is. Compliment sandwich is a positive thing, a what you kind of need to work on, the negative, and then a positive again, right? So compliment sandwich, 2 positives, 1 correction, 1 negative, quote unquote. And they were saying like, hey, like, you know, it doesn't work because they're so focused on a positive that they may not really fully listen to the negatives, or they prefer the positives, so they won't listen to the negatives, and yada, yada, yada. And I think there's some merit to that, right? But the idea really in this, to keep things simple, is you can always say something nice about someone and their performance, even if it was abysmal. Effort was there, right? You were on the right path, and then just took it downhill. But it, you know, we started out well, right? Like there's all these things that you can say that's positive. And that's the point, is you're trying to adjust, and you should address the positives, because it shows that you're not just there to make them fail. You're trying to build a relationship with these people. Like I said, right? I am here as a trainer. I'm here to help you succeed, not to help you fail. I don't want you to fail. But if all I do is say you're doing this wrong, you're doing this wrong, you're doing this wrong, you're going to have no encouragement, no incentive to want to push on again. So me as the instructor has to have something positive to say to show you that, hey, these things are good. Keep doing these things, because I want to see that I want to see that repeated. But I do want to see these changes, make these changes. And if you make these changes, this is how I like round it all up. You're going to be immaculate. You're going to crush it. That's a positive thing, is you're going to crush it if you do what I tell you do. So it's not sugarcoating. And I think maybe this is where it got, is like we focus too much on sugarcoating the compliment sandwich. No. What did they do well? Were they intentional? Did they do steps 1 through 5 well, but then 5 through 8, we kind of lost it? Okay, I'm going to correct steps 5 through 8. So if you do this, this, and this, you will absolutely crush it. And this is all you need. So you have the foundation. You just got to work on these last little things. And I promise you, if you work on these things, you will get 100%. You'll get an A. You'll pass this class. Whatever. You'll get the move. But this is how in my philosophy, how the compliment sandwich would be. But if I just said you didn't do step 5 right, you did step 6 terrible, you couldn't even technically get to step 7 or 8 because you messed up that bad. Now, obviously, this is an extreme, but that still is what it's going to portray. Even though I just said you didn't do step 5 right, didn't do step 6 right, didn't do this right, didn't do that right, right? That still creates you did this so bad, I really have more negatives for you than I do positives. And now they feel like they failed the instructor, or they failed themselves, or both. And there's no ability to bring that positivity back. But if I can just be positive and say, hey, you did step 1 through 4 super, super well. I can tell that you care about knowing this. If you do this, like a corrective, and that was the key thing, I said corrective, then you will be successful. And this is like the last little tidbit that I can say from this is I am here to give you the corrections, not what you failed in doing. So if you want to be a good trainer, a good instructor, you have to give corrective actions for them to take. And we do this, Barefoot, we do this really well. Best example, simplest example that I can ever think of. And this is how your feedback should be for everything that you should do. We have a child or adult. Adults run too. All right. Not ageist here. But someone's running in the pool. We all know, everyone knows, don't run in the pool. It's like the most number one rule that everyone knows. Instead of saying, hey, don't walk, we say, walk, please. And now we say please because we're adding the positivity. Because I want you all to try this. Scream walk as loud as you can and tell me it doesn't sound like you're trying to destroy their very soul. Try it. It's fine. You can even do it right now. Maybe I will give you some time. Try it. Scream walk as loud as you can and try to do it to where it sounds nice. And then do the same thing. Scream walk, please, as loud as you can. And guess what? It'll sound nice because we said please at the end. But minus the please, even just by saying walk, I have told them exactly what to do to be successful. I told them if they walk, can't yell at them. They're walking. But if I say don't run, well, they know running's out. But I got skipping, I got cartwheels, I got backflips, I can do the worm, I can gallop. I can still do so many things. And this is a huge concept that is good for anybody, whether you're a manager, whether you're anything. Step one, never say, don't do this. And leave it at that. Always say, if you're going to say, don't do this, that's fine. If you say, this is why, and if you follow up with, this is the correct action. But if you just leave it at don't do this, everyone assumes like, okay, I know not to do that. But then they still don't necessarily know what to do. And so I feel like a lot of times, like people, like I'll say, don't do that. Hey, don't do this. I'm like, God, Gore, like, why do they not understand? We should really take a step back and maybe realize maybe they don't understand what good is. So tell your people what good is. Tell them when they did good. If they did everything good for the love of all things, tell them. Don't be the person that just says, don't do this or you did this wrong and leave it at that and walk away. When they do something great, when they do something good, say, hey, that was awesome. If you have the opportunity to spotlight someone who crushed it and did absolutely perfectly, say, hey, Jim over here absolutely crushed it. And I just want everyone to know, good job, Jim. Let's all give Jim a round of applause. And I'm telling you right now, even the most introverted person in the entire world will have loved that moment. I know because I am that person. And I got called out for doing something great. And I may not have told anyone there, and I may have turned super red and said, don't look at me while I was there. And I still went and told my dog when I got home. I have friends, okay, but I love my dog, so I tell my dog. But so I know it means the world to them. So do the same. It's like one of the best pieces of advice I could give you when it comes to leading people, when it comes to training them, is tell them what is good, and then just correct what could be better. And make sure they understand that if they do these other things, if you do that and teach them the concepts and the whys and the hows, then that retention is going to stick. The concepts are key. It is better than any step-by-step formula out there. You have to teach, if you want people to retain, you have to teach concepts. There's no ifs or buts about it. Last but not least, we've come here. This is the longest episode. Sorry. Maybe I will make it a part 2. Maybe I'll just make it a long episode. I don't know. This is, again, I'm passionate about this. This is what I do for a living. This is what I stand for. I could probably think of like 12 more steps to do, 12 more tips. Maybe I'll do like another like part 2 to the part 3 or 4 or whatever. But this is what I live for. I mean, this is who I am. And I will study this. I will study people training other people, trying to figure out what they're doing and what they're not. So I'm sorry that this is long, but I hope you all are really feeling good about it, because this is at least the foundational pieces that I have found to be very successful. And honestly, if you're listening to this episode at this point, you're hooked and you already appreciate all this tangenting. So we're good. And just know that I appreciate you and love you. The last one is the most simple and probably sometimes the hardest to do. But never give up. This to me means more than anything else. You are training them to be successful. If they failed, it's because you failed. And that's like the hardest truth to admit to yourself. But there is always a way to train someone. There's always a way to teach someone. It's just a matter of if we can find the correct things to say, the correct way to say them, and the proper problem-solving techniques to make it all happen. But if you want to be the instructor, if you want to be the world's greatest instructor, like I am, world's greatest instructor trainer, if you want to be that person, you can never give up on that person. If they give up on you and they never come back, different story. You did everything you could. But if you want to be the greatest, if you want to be the strongest, you want to be the best, then you have to continuously seek and find ways to be the best instructor for that person until they are successful. And you must keep providing solution after solution, idea after idea, 12,000 random different ways to explain the same exact concept, the same exact steps until they get it. And I promise you, if you stick with it, once they finally do get it, it is by far one of the most rewarding experiences of your life because you see the light bulb click. And then you see that they do get it and your light bulb clicks. And then it's a huge celebration. And that's where like the real super memories come from. And you know what? I can honestly say that for those people that struggle to learn, a lot of the people gave up on them way more than they should have. And they are going to be far more eternally grateful for those that continued to help them and try way after way after way to not give up on them until they were successful. So to be one of the greatest instructors you could ever be, you have to provide everything until they get it. And then you can be that successful leader, that successful trainer, that successful instructor, whatever you want to call it. But you don't give up. And even when they give up, you probably should find them. Well, it depends on what you're doing, right? But you could really go above and beyond and say, hey, like, I'm here. I'm still here to help. You let me know when and where, and I'll be here for you. And that's the best that you can do. And when they respond, they respond. I'm telling you, it is always worth trying another solution than it is to give up on someone. And if someone failed, we just need to find the right way to do it. And sometimes that means figuring it out, right? Figuring it out ourselves. Sometimes it just means asking someone more experience. Sometimes it means asking our co-instructor or co-trainer, hey, this is all I got. What do you got for me? Sometimes it involves brainstorming with 5, 6, 20,000 people. I don't know. But I'm telling you, there is always a way to pass someone. There's always a way to pass someone. All right. I've done a lot. It's almost 2 hours in. Again, I don't have Tanner to hold me accountable to my preaching, but this is also probably my most beloved topic too. So it probably would have been 2 hours with or without Tanner. But I appreciate every single one of y'all of being a part of my solo podcast. Again, if you think of a fun name for us or for these like one-on-ones with me, with you guys, I would love it. I can't think of anything other than like Parker's philosophy, and it sounds terrible. I don't know. If you like it, let me know. But got our followers, got some new ones. Wanted to give you all a shout out. Again, I really just cannot thank you all enough for for following us, for listening, for the downloads, everything. It really does help. So appreciate everyone that's really helping this journey come through. It's been a lot of fun. As we go into the summer, it's been harder, but I'm still excited that we can still do these and get some stuff out there. So to our new followers on the gram, Trent Whitley, old barefoot guy, really appreciate you, good sir. Thanks for the follow. David Mendoza, super thanks. Garrett Putney, one of the best instructors ever. Speaking of instructors, so Garrett, this episode's for you. I think you embody all these things. Phenomenal instructor, brown belt at Wolverine Jiu-Jitsu, and it just embodies everything I just talked about. Super kind, always looks for a different way to explain something, knows exactly how to say it to the exact person because of how well he knows them. Great human being. So Garrett, big shout out to you. Shannon, my other homie over at Wolverine Jiu-Jitsu, purple belt, and will kick your butt. I am telling you. So watch out. But one of the nicest human beings ever met, and great human. So thank you for following. I really appreciate you. Dan Cruz and Owen Barr, my last two. Thank you all for the follows. Really appreciate everything that you all have done. And if you have followed on the Facebook page as well, I'll see if I can give you all a shout out real quick. But Facebook is not as friendly. But we'll see. Zach Violet, I think, is the most recent. And my name's second. I know I followed it first. So yeah, if you follow the Facebook page, I appreciate you, but I apologize that it's not in order like Instagram is. So thank y'all very much. We also have YouTube, TikTok, everything. Give us a follow on there. Actually, I do take that back. I do have some TikTok followers that I can mention. Let's see if this is in order. Oh yeah, we got all the people. All right, let's go through this real quick, as fast as I humanly can. I'm just going through. I don't think I've done this in a while. So, Savannah Watley, the Savannah Watley, thank you. She was on our last episode. Be sure to check it out. It's one of the best interviews we've ever done. Connor Johnson, appreciate you. Emma, thank you so much. Marianne Butler, you're a legend. Sophia Remus, she's like she's a tiny little child, but she'll flex and she's like a pit bull. So watch out. But she's awesome. Love you, Sophia. William Tolan, Claire Depper, Emma Yostin. I believe that's Sharky. Kai, Judd, Ava, Gabby, Mia Camacho, Landon Mix, and Texas Maverick Truck. Thank you all for the follow. Really appreciate it. Some absolute legends in that wonderful following page. Thank you all for following. And that is all I have for all our appreciation. Again, thank you all so much. Last but not least, we got Barefoot World. Barefoot World training's out, man. We've been training well. We've trained over almost probably close to 200 people already so far. It's been absolutely crazy. And that's just in DFW. I think we close another 100 to 150 in Houston as well. So thank you to everyone that's trained. Really appreciate you guys. Apply, guys. Our application is in the Instagram. It's the very bottom link. And then you just click on DFW Houston, whichever one you're there. But apply, come work with us. We'd love to have you. We got all sorts of things. Our last Barefoot Bash, our water gun fight did get canceled. I will let you all know soon when we're doing our next Barefoot Bash, when it is going to be, where it's going to be. But we're super pumped to have it, and it's going to be a great time. And there should be a lot of people there. My goal, first Barefoot Bash, I want to go 125 people to be at this Barefoot Bash. All right, we're going to take over whatever place we're going to take over. We're going to take over. But shirts are coming. I know Tanner, he's not here, but he did say that we're basically getting one more shirt finalized. And once we get that finalized, then we're going to get some made and ready for you to order. Now, these are barefoot shirts. These are not Big Bear Theory podcast shirts. If you want that, I'm going to need to start seeing some requests. So if you want some Big Bear Theory merch, need y'all to put in a request so I can get that for y'all. All right. If I get enough requests, then I will absolutely start getting some made, but only after request. Okay. So like, follow, subscribe, YouTube, TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, Spotify, Apple Podcasts. We're on it all. But if the more you support, the more I'm going to provide. So that's it in regards to Barefoot World, quick and easy. Pools open as soon as this weekend. So if you're trying to work and get paid now, train now because the pools are already open. All right. The rest of the pools open Memorial Day weekend, and then it's a party all the way through. We have pools open all the way through the end of September. So lots of hours to give, lots of work to give, great company to work for. And I've already seen a lot of great people get trained. So very grateful for everyone that's trained with us. Very grateful for our instructors. Y'all are absolute legends. And I cannot thank you enough for being so good. So that is it. That's all I got. My voice is tired. I was supposed to drink like all of this and all of this before getting off, and it didn't happen because I didn't have Tanner not to talk to me. But I appreciate y'all. Hearts in the chat. Love y'all.